Live. Hello from Public Lab to everyone watching. This is Liz with a camera that's not working, but I'm extremely happy to introduce Laura, Claudia, and Anne, who are going to be presenting work from three of the most intense, both socially and environmentally, project sites that we have going on in the Public Lab community right now. So this is a real treat, and I'm really grateful that they could all be here with us today. So I'm just going to hand it to Laura Shipley to present her project and share some of her information with us. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thanks, Liz. So, Laura Shipley, I'm a filmmaker and media artist and also a media arts educator. And I'm working on a project called the Appalachian Mountaintop Patrol, or AMP, and it's a collaborative environmental watchdog and multimedia training initiative that's taking place in Raleigh, Boone County, and Pocahontas counties in West Virginia. And these counties are really on the front line of both mountaintop removal and also hydrofracking, because they sit on top of the Marcellus Shale. And so I'm working with representatives from several different environmental organizations from the area that include Cold River Mountain Watch, the Kanawha Forest Coalition, Christians for the Mountains, and Radical Actions for Mountain People Survival, or RAMPS. And so it's like sort of this whole gamut of different types of environmental organizations in the area. And so we're doing sort of a series of media training workshops throughout the year where they're learning how to shoot documentary video, how to use environmental sensors, and also how to do aerial photography. And so we're going to use a variety of methods. We do observational video, and we also interview people in the community, both on camera and off camera, to protect people's identity, because it's a very highly contested practice, mountaintop removal, and of course there's a lot of conversation in the community between those who are upset about all of the health and environmental effects and those who need jobs. And I think this is a conversation that really transcends just this particular situation. We're also doing aerial and underwater videography, so using underwater casings for video cameras to film contaminated water, and then also using kite photography or kite videography and drones. And so we actually just purchased a drone that we're going to start using in August, which everyone is pretty excited about. We're also going to be using deer cams, which are these little motion sensor activated cameras that people use for hunting in the area, and plant them at some of the suspected dumping sites, because of course, you know, the big story, one of the big stories of what is happening here is sort of what happens when no one is looking. So for example, on a Friday afternoon or on a holiday or before a big rainstorm, that's when a lot of the illegal dumping happens, when they start flushing all sorts of chemicals into the local waterways. We're also going to be using the Dustuino, which we are building or attempting to build via the directions on the Public Lab website. And so because particulate matter is such a big problem in the area, this is going to be one of the things that we sort of weave into our narrative. And so the goals for this project is to really kind of collectively develop testing and documentation methods that these organizations can use for this specific project, but then also take into the future. And so what we're looking to do is create a variety of different types of media, and so that includes a 40-minute documentary that's more of a traditional style documentary, which includes the documentation of the project and process, and then also vignettes that are shot, you know, sort of as people are living this experience. And we're also going to be using this material to show to lawmakers, so sort of making these 2 to 3 minute short videos that are brought into meetings with lawmakers in Washington as people are trying to pass the ACE Act, which is the Appalachian Community Health Emergency Act, which is an act that would effectively pause all future permits for mountaintop removal and add a lot more oversight into the process and demand a federal health study on the effects of mountaintop removal. And we're also looking to screen this material locally in the community and then also on public access. So one of our participants from Christians for the Mountains has been active in the public access scene in West Virginia. And of course, the coal companies have their own show, and so we feel like this material should go out to the people as well. And so in July, we had our first documentary video workshop, and mid-month is when I'm returning to start incorporating the aerial photography and the infrared cameras and the Dust We Know portion of the project. So our aerial photography actually hasn't launched, no pun intended, quite yet. And so we'll be using kites because that's a cheap, easy way to get the aerial view, and then we'll also be working together using this drone, which has a couple of different ends in mind, the first of which is, of course, getting these compelling visual images and being able to access sites that we otherwise couldn't access. And then also because drones are inherently newsworthy, that kind of helps add a layer of newsworthiness to the project that we're doing. And it's important to get aerial documentation in these areas, first of all, because people don't know what's happening behind the tree line. One of the practices for mountaintop removal is that, you know, of course they go in and they cut down all the trees and they take out all the earth and dump it into the valley and plug up all the streams and then go in and get the coal seam, and they do all of this through blasting and cutting down trees. But from the road or from many properties, you can't really see this happening, and so it's really important in terms of public opinion in these communities for people to be able to see what's happening directly behind their house. Also, in terms of hydrofracking, this is in many ways an invisible practice in these communities. The workers who drill the wells and maintain the wells come in mostly from out of state. They don't talk to anyone in the community. They go up, you know, ATV access roads that are, you know, on public land or in privately owned land. And then these wells, which people don't know exist, are certainly then leaching chemicals into local waterways. And so one of the other things we want to do with this aerial mapping is to just really take it even door to door in some of these communities. It's a population where if you have a job, it's probably in the coal industry. If you don't have a job, or if you're an older person, those people tend to be a little bit more open to thinking about, you know, the pros and cons of this practice. But because it's a rapidly declining population, because this industry is rapidly declining, you have a lot of sort of older and disabled people who are feeling the effects of this happening, yet it's impossible for them to get out and actually see what's happening. And so we're looking to have these images be useful. And I'll just show, I'm going to share my screen just really quickly. I don't have aerial, I did my first aerial kite photography test actually with Liz the other day here in New York City, and so we'll be taking that to West Virginia mid-month. But I'll just show you a few images from my screen. Can you guys see my screen? Yeah, okay, cool. I'm just going to go through just a few little images so you can sort of see. So this is actually fracking fluid that's leaching into a local waterway, and this was done on an excursion with local residents. Here's a giant slurry impoundment, so this is for mountaintop removal where they wash the coal. And of course, again, this is problematic for a variety of reasons. It, of course, leaches into the local waterways and has the possibility to cause devastating floods, but then also they will inject these same byproducts into old coal mines. They call them injection wells, which then causes all sorts of erosion and destabilization and contamination of the water table. And then here's just another tailing pond that we found. And here I just quickly want to show just the faces of some of the participants here. So this is Alan Johnson from Christians for the Mountains, and he's going to, I think, be a really great resource for this project because he has he has a coalition of religious leaders in the area, which of course kind of opens up a new audience for these types of conversations. And this is just from one of our first workshop where people were learning to use the documentary video. And these are images that are now coming back to me via Dropbox from some of the participants. So we see these huge strip mine sites next to some untouched mountains and all of the heavy equipment that's always flying down the mountain roads. And just more filming in the back. Here's the workshop. And so we have, it's interesting, the coalition of people have come together. Some of them are, they're much more, I guess, radical. They're people who get arrested and chain themselves to heavy machinery. And then we have people that work through much more traditional means. So it's kind of, it'll be interesting to see how people are able to kind of take these methods and then use them within their own organizations and how that kind of manifests according to their philosophy. And here's just another image from there. And so yeah, I don't necessarily have any lessons learned from the aerial portion, but this is our plan, and this is going into affect the aerial portion. August 15th, I'll be back down there working, so I'll be excited to share what we come up with and what we see. So yeah, anyone have any questions or comments or thoughts?
Laura, that was fantastic. Thank you
Okay.
so much. Yeah, I'm kind of blown away by the scope of this project and how many people are involved, and also how many different kinds of data you're setting out to collect.
Right.
And you're heading down there in about 1 week, huh?
Yeah, heading down in 1 week, so trying to rally everybody and get them together and figure out when we can work. And in terms of these different types of data, then I come from the background of being a storyteller, a documentary filmmaker, so it's going to be, I think, one of our big hurdles, and this becomes a hurdle, I guess, for censor journalism or this kind of work in general, is like, how do you then make this accessible for an audience that doesn't have a science background, or how do you weave scientific data into a narrative? And so I think that's going to be an exciting thing to kind of work on and think about and develop together.
Yeah, I think your strength in creating narratives is going to be just incredible with this issue, and I think the whole public lab community also will learn from it. In that you're going to be not only capturing data, but right away presenting it through video format, which doesn't often happen.
Right.
So it's exciting to see you pioneer that.
Yeah, it's going to be, it's a big experiment, so we're interested to see how that's going to pan out and how we can make this readable for people as well.
Okay, great. Well, we have the chat room open, and I don't see questions coming in yet, but you may get some by the end of this hour. I'd like to go ahead and pass it to who would like to present second? Claudia, you might be on mute.
Oh, I could go.
Hi, Claudia. Great, thank you. Great. I think we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So a bit, because the whole image is gone weird. So I'm a food security specialist, and normally I've been working with the UN in humanitarian operations. But since 1998, I've been sort of volunteering with one of the refugee camps in the south of Lebanon. And it's a refugee camp set up in 1948 by Palestinians, and they moved in to tents, and basically now, rather than tents, they live in a city. And it's an informally built city, and the work that we're working on with the community there is that they're getting organized to sort of be more active on how the space is being run, and to set up a number of green spaces within the camp. So one of the first things that they needed was a map, and they don't have maps of the camp. So the aerial mapping has been all to get the community to have some maps for them. So I also have some images that I thought will probably help tell the story better. Let me just share them. Let's see. You can all see them?
Yes, they look great, Claudia.
Yeah, okay. So basically, this is at the edge of the camp, and in this camp we have 22,000 people living in a very dense hub. I mean, you have here in this image, you have the main street, and then the rest are just alleys all over the camp. This is another image just taken from the edge of the camp. So what they've been finding is that to do anything to improve the conditions in the camp, they needed a map. So with a group of youth and, yeah, basically a group of sort of 5 youth, and with all the support of the local community, we've been mapping it all. So we've taken all the photos, and we're now building the actual map. But what has been interesting, and I guess I have maybe more lessons learned because I'm sort of putting the map together now, but one of our main problems is that these are the streets. So for for balloon mapping, it was very difficult, either because of the narrowness of the streets or cables everywhere. So it ended up that, I mean, this is an overview of the camp, that we ended up needing to do it from 16 different places and climbing into people's rooftops to be able to get enough images. So we're actually now just putting all the images together for the map. And my interest is in aerial photography, is in doing the map, but then in how the map is going to be used. They have no good maps, so there's a lot of uses for it, but sort of the next stage from here is really what use they will put to it. So I'm actually quite interested on that, because the purpose of the map is to improve the conditions in the camp, create dialogue, and give visibility to their situation. So yeah, I think that's it really for now.
Great. Claudia, those pictures are incredible. I can't believe that your team of youth went to 16 different sites across the camp just to get enough coverage, enough documentation. How many mapping expeditions have you done so far?
Well, we actually did a lot more. One of our main problems was that even though we had a lot of community support, the balloon was shot down twice.
Wait, shot? What do you mean?
I mean, we gathered that it was just sort of, youth on rooftops of houses. You see a big red balloon flying over, and it's a sensitive area, so I mean, it's easy to shoot it. So I'm quite curious to sort of hear later about sort of the use of drones and the use of balloons, because in our camp at the end, it was the best way to win trust from people. While we had it on paper, the fact that with a balloon you're tied to the balloon and you have to be present in the camp all over. I mean, I had to walk all over and climb onto people's roofs, was a very poetic way and very poignant way to sort of be like, well, this is a map for the community, and we're here in the middle of it doing it with you. So, so yeah, it was shot twice down.
Wow. Okay, this is incredible. I anticipate getting more questions, or at least even among the presenters, I can hear you have questions for each other. Let us have Anne share her project with us, and then maybe we can get into, I think, some of the topics that are clearly emerging already. Thank you, Claudia.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thanks.
Hi, Anne.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So hi, my name is Anne, artist, researcher, and I guess emerging documentarian. And I've been in Canada for the last year on a Fulbright fellowship. It's in partnership with National Geographic. So we have the opportunity to blog on National Geographic's blog about our process and what we've been doing. So my project has been mapping the Northern Gateway Pipeline through storytelling. And so I'll just go a bit into what the pipeline is. So the Enbridge Northern Gateway Pipeline is an oil and gas development project being proposed in northwestern Canada. It's a twin pipeline that would carry heavy crude oil from the oil sands in northern Alberta, and I'll carry that oil west to the port of Kitimat, which is on the North BC coast. And then from there, the oil is supposed to be carried on super tankers through the Hecate Strait across to Asia, potentially, or down to the US. And so I propose to document and work with the communities who live along this proposed pipeline route and look at and hear this pipeline project could potentially impact or affect them and where they live. And so I've been using traditional tools such as audio and video and photo and writing, but also trying to incorporate some of Public Lab's tools into the project. So I've been mainly working with the map